something that moves.
Welcome back to the cheat code. I have been gone for a minute because life is just like, you know what? She can handle a lot. So let's just throw it all at her at the same time in her face. So that's what I've been dealing with. So as if you've been following any of my stories and my story times and whatnot, as these things, these cycles, these things that I've been experiencing start to come to a close, things are going to be a little bit more, I want to just say organized, but they're going to be a lot more predictable, we'll say. I mean, there's always going to be stuff, but you can work around little bumps and stuff like that in the road. Sorry. You can work around those types of things, but when like huge snowballs, huge curveballs are like being thrown at you, it's a little bit difficult and you have to prioritize. And although I do take this as a priority because I do have a goal, there's just like some things that just have to take precedence because it's just some affairs, and once they're dealt with, I can talk about them, but right now, unfortunately not. But one thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm probably going to break this down into like, why was I just thinking of those Biggie lines? Let's say break it down into sections, and then the rest of the song. Okay, anyway, so what I wanted to talk about was the number 17. So this is like a really like highlighted number in my life for the past 2 years. And it's even more interesting because I started seeing a lot of like, this is like one of the numbers, like when I was talking about, what was I talking about? When I was talking about like the spiritual awakening and how you start seeing numbers and different things like that and synchronicities and whatnot. There's certain numbers that have not left. Like they're constant, they're persistent, they're daily, they're all throughout the day. And then there's certain numbers that will pop up and they'll be present for like the whole day, a couple of days, a couple of weeks, even a couple of months, and then it'll just disappear. And then sometimes it'll pop back up again a couple of weeks or so later and disappear again. And sometimes I'll never see that number combination again. And there's others that again have just been steady throughout, like since the beginning of my awakening, and they just stay there. Other times, like, they're more pronounced than others. But when I'm saying more pronounced than others, so let's say, for example, if I'm constantly seeing, combinations of the number 3, like there's sometimes that will be more pronounced than the other numbers that I'm seeing. So it's like really kind of saying, pay attention to this more than anything right now. And then other times I don't see it as often. So now hopefully I have your attention. Not that that was attention worthy, but let me get to the point. So the number 17. So what happened was I have been seeing like a lot of song titles with the number 17. And I saw the one from a couple days ago with Joyner Lucas that is called 17. So I was like, let me listen to it later. And if you guys watch any of my other videos, I said like my watch later list on YouTube is like, it's at capacity. So I don't know. I just like, I'll see something. I'm like, that's interesting, but I'm not interesting enough for me to watch it now. I'll watch it later. So I always just put watch later. I'm about to delete that whole list because I don't even remember half the things that are on there. So, wow, that's like such a, sorry. I was just thinking how much that reflects my life where I'm like, man, I can't deal with this right now. Let me push it to the side. All right. So what happened was, kind of rewinding a little bit. I was at the store, I think this was like maybe a month or so ago, something like that. It's just rough time frames. And I was in a section of this home store that I go to because I mentioned that, I'm trying to like just get everything brand new because things need to be replaced. So every once in a while, like I'll pop into that home store and just see if there's anything that I want. So they have like a book section and I like buying notebooks because I like to like write my ideas and things like that down. And I was walking through that section and they have like a couple of books. Like they'll have like cookbooks, clothing, fashion books, things like that. And the books are usually facing with like the spine of the book showing, because it's not like a bookstore where, you'll have things on display where you can actually see, like it might be like an autobiography or it might be like a cookbook or something like that. So it's only the spine showing. So there's only one book that was actually facing forward. And that was a book, an autobiography on Mac Miller. And I was just like, for some strange reason, I literally stood there for what felt like 5 minutes just staring at the cover of that book. And I'm going to insert a picture of it because I took a picture of it because I kept seeing it. Um, yeah, I was just staring at it for a few minutes and nothing was telling me to really buy it, but something was saying to me, like, what was it? I was trying to think of how to explain it. It was almost like not buy it or get it, but something was drawing me to it and I couldn't quite figure out what it was. But like I said, I stood there for like maybe 5 minutes or so. And then I was listening to someone who I referenced before, their channel that I watch. And this person, like they do a lot of channeled messages. And in one of the channeled messages, this person was like, she was talking about just the different random things that were popping into her mind that she wrote down. And she's like, I also got Mac Miller. And then she skipped on something else. I'm like, yo, I did not even say that like out loud to anybody. Nobody else was with me. How did this bitch get in my head? It's funny. It's a funny thing to say, even though I know that, for me, people have had those experiences with me, but it's still weird. Like I said, I'm still adjusting to all of this, even though it's been going on for a few years. It's still weird to me that people can read energy because once it's if it's in your head, like someone can get in there and get that information. I don't know how. Um, I'm not gonna get into it. Anyways, let me just keep going. So that creeped me out. I was like, because she said a couple other things that were relevant as well. Like I was at the grocery store that day as well, and I was trying to decide between two things that I wanted to buy. So let's just say it was like butter and sour cream. And she's like, um, I also got butter, sour cream, orange juice, and I'm just like, is somebody watching me? Like, is somebody following? Who's telling her this? Like, I don't understand. It was creeping me out. So, um, probably 2 weeks after that happened, yeah, no, maybe about a month or so. No, 2 weeks, 3 weeks after that happened. I had still been going back to the same, what do you call it? Um, House store. And again, back down that aisle, just looking to see if they have any other like notebooks that have like, cause I pay attention to like what's on the cover of the notebook, if it looks nice, if I like the design, whatever, whatever. And again, the few times that I had gone in between, I did not see that Mac Miller book again, but then it popped up again and I saw it. And again, it was the only book that was facing forward. And I'm like, okay, this has to mean something. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, should I get it? And something was almost like, maybe there's a message in there for you, or there's some reason you need to read it. And I've never listened to his music. Well, I listened to one video after, listen, I watched one of his videos after um, people had been like raving about him before he passed away. And I was just like, oh, wow, he's actually really talented. But for whatever reason, I just never really took too much interest. So I'm like, why do I keep getting drawn to this book? And why is there only ever one copy? And why is that one copy always facing me? That's why I ended up taking a picture of it because I was going to hold on to it and look it up and see like what it's about. And the other day, when I watched the Joyner Lucas video, like I said, it said 17. And I keep seeing the number 17 popping up in other ways other than just as the number. It's starting to pop up as like song titles or titles of people's videos. And I'm like, okay, this really must mean something. What is this trying to tell me? So I thought about it and I was thinking about that a lot of the numbers that I see are related to like ages or stages or even grades of school that I was in and what that represented, what was happening at that time. And I remember there's like a huge turning point. Like my life made a huge beeline at the age of 17. So I was thinking, okay, how that relates to the book and how it relates to Mac Miller is that in the beginning of that Joyner Lucas song 17, he mentions Mac Miller. I have no idea what the relevance is. I just only watched the video once. I didn't really pay too much attention to the lyrics. I kind of got a little bit of an understanding, but it was one of those things again that I was going to say, okay, let me watch it later. But I'm like, nah, let me just watch it now and just like see what this is about. So the fact that again he shouted out Mac Miller and I had no idea what the relevance was to the video. It might have been maybe something about his life. I don't know if they grew up in the same place. Like I have no idea if they were friends. Like I don't know what it is. So I was just like, okay, why do these things keep repeating themselves? It's obviously trying to tell me something. So I'm like, maybe his book is like a cautionary tale, or maybe because, I want, like I said, I want to start talking about like mental health and things like that, and some experiences that I've had like with healthcare and stuff. It sounds a little bit boring, but let me tell you something. These are horror stories that I'm just starting here. Well, we're gonna get there. But these are like mad horror stories. Like you would think, like, why haven't you sued anybody yet? Because it's coming. It's gotta come. Something's gotta change. But anyway, so I was like, maybe it's like a cautionary tale or something like that. And then when I decided, like, let me just Google search it. And it came up, and the first thing that popped up is said like 4.7 stars out of 5. And I'm like, oh, it's a good read then. And then when I was looking at like the highlights of what people, like the comments were, it said like, astounding, astonishing, a cautionary tale. And I was like, damn, I said, I wonder if it's a cautionary tale. So I'm guessing that it must have something to do with, I'm just literally going off of intuition because I have no idea. I don't know about his life other than I believe there was some depression, some drug use and things like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think if I go back to the store and I see that book again, then I'm just gonna get it. I'm not gonna order it. If it pops up again, I'll buy it. But in terms of like cautionary tale, I feel like it's more something I can learn from in regards to like my personal advocacy. So there might be like a story in there, like within his life story, where it's something that can be used as an example of how people deal with, emotional issues and stuff like that, and how sometimes it could go unnoticed and unseen. Because one thing that I do notice about people who suffer emotionally, in particular, like with emotional disorders, like I'm talking about like anything from like stress, like chronic stress that can lead to like insomnia, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, things can that can start off small, and they can just, when they're untreated, unnoticed, unrecognized, self-medicated, they can turn into whole other problems. So I feel like it might have something to do with that, because one thing I do remember people saying about him is that they never expected it from him, only because of the fact that he was the kind of person that would always reach out to other people and ask, how are you doing? And always be the person that's there for people. And one thing that often happens with people who are suffering is that they become the person that they want in their life. They become that caring, compassionate person that they wish that they had. I don't know if he did have anybody like that in his life, but oftentimes that's just really how it works. I don't know, that's some kind of form of human nature that we just have. You tend to treat people, not everyone, because some people don't treat people how they want to be treated. They treat people how they feel. So if you feel miserable, you treat people in a miserable way. But a lot of times you'll find stories of people who, didn't make it. And you usually hear people say like, I never would have thought that this person was like that because of how they acted, and they always were checking up on me. So I never thought that they ever had a problem. But anyways, moving right along. So what was I going to get at? So part one about the 17 situation. So when I was 17, my last year of high school, while I was 17, turning 18, I finally got a job, and I was working part-time. And I wanted to, for my last year, I wanted to do co-op. And I wanted to do co-op at a record label. So this is back when record labels still actually mattered. So I wanted to learn more about music, learn more about the music industry and things like that. So I said, okay, you know what? The only way I could think of getting in was to do co-op. And I know people have done co-op at record labels. And in Canada, it's not really a big industry. Like music is not a big industry. Even though there are a lot of Canadian artists that are popular, they usually become popular by moving out of the country, or they become popular in other countries. So I went to my guidance counselor and I told her, and so the school I went to was semestered. So I went to her my first semester of my last year of high school, and I said, okay, I want to do co-op at a record label. And she told me it's too soon to sign up for that now. So I have to come back next semester. So I'm thinking that doesn't make any sense because the semester is going to start. So what am I going to do? Like sit at home and wait for them to give me an answer, yes or no, if I'm accepted to do co-op there? So it didn't make any sense to me. So towards the end of the first semester of my last year, I went back to her and she wasn't there. She was like on vacation or she was sick or something like that. But I just remember they said she's not here to come back like in a week or something like that. I don't think they gave me a time as to when she would be back. So I went back. There was nobody for me to talk to. I let the receptionist know that this like what it had to do with, and that like time. It was very time sensitive, and they're like, "Yeah, you have to wait till she comes back." So literally, I'm trying to remember if I signed up for any classes. I don't remember if I signed up for any classes or if I was just focusing on the co-op. I can't remember. I think I had to select some classes and then I was going to go back to her because I didn't get a chance to talk to her. It was such a mess because honestly, at that time especially, I was so much less vocal than I am now, which is even not so vocal. But I was not in a position where I would see myself really standing up for myself and being very vocal and being like, no, 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 this is important to me. If I'm not getting an answer from her, go talk to the principal or go talk to somebody, talk to a teacher. I never really kind of thought in those ways. I was just kind of like, well, I guess I just have to listen to what they're saying. They're the guidance counselor, just being like that. So the last semester, I had 3 credits left to graduate. And I think that covered the co-op. So, or I think I need to take 1 class, and I think the co-op covered 2 classes or something like that, 2 credits rather. I don't remember. Anyway, I always get caught up on these details and make the story so freaking long. Forgive me. I'm trying to learn how to be more succinct. Okay, so went back to her last semester. I think it was the week before school started because usually, like, the first day of school when you're back to school, um, you don't really have much to do. It's kind of like it's almost like an introduction or something like that. So I went to go talk to her and she's like, oh, you should have come to me earlier. And I was like, but again, people pleaser, very shy, very quiet, very reserved, didn't really say anything. Like, girl, I came to you and you told me it was too early. I came to you at the beginning of the last semester and you told me it was too early. So she's like, okay, well, I'll try my best, but I don't know, hopefully you get lucky. And I was just so angry inside. And of course, out of the 2 record labels that actually were taking people for co-op, one wasn't doing it that year. And the other one that was, they were only taking 2 people and they already took the 2 people that they were taking. So I was just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I felt like my life was over because I knew, like I mentioned before, I knew exactly what I wanted to do since I was 16 years old. And it involved fashion and it also involved music. And I'll get into that another time. But those were the 2 main things. So, yeah, you still kind of had to like know people and like find your way in. So, yeah, so when that happened, I was just like so distraught. I'm like, what am I gonna do now? Like, I have like no, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I said, okay, you know what? Maybe I can just try the fashion route first. Maybe I'll go that route first and see, you know, what comes of that. I was also thinking of other ways that I could get into music. And again, like I said, I'm going to talk about that another time. So, I had for the first semester, I finally got a job. I had been looking for a job for like 3 years. Nobody would hire me. Like literally, I got 2 callbacks of all the resumes that I put out. I got 2 callbacks and I did not get hired. I finally got a job off the strength of just, a friend of mine that was working somewhere. And the manager, he was such a dick. He looked like Lex Luthor and he acted like him too. He was so mean. Like nobody would ever go to him if they needed to leave work because they weren't feeling well or they were not going to come in that day or vacation day or whatever. Nobody ever went to him. Like he was terrible. I got stories about that, but that's for maybe some other time. Maybe I'll do like a work horror story situation. But that man like damn near threatened me and stuff like that. But again, I was young, so I didn't really know how to handle certain situations. So okay, so where are we now? Working part-time. So now I had like 3 credits to finish school. I was not going to be staying in the school to do it because that's a whole other long story that I don't want to drain out for or drag out, excuse me. It just was the fact that the way that it worked out, it's like sometimes I'd have a class in the morning and then I have like 2 classes in the afternoon, or I'd have one class and then a spare and then another class and then another spare. And it was just all over the place. So again, the famous guidance counselor was like, oh, you can go into this classroom and just do all your work in that one classroom and just get your work from your teachers and just do it in the classroom. Turned out that she didn't know what the hell she was talking about. And that just turned into a whole, I'm trying not to curse, but just turned into a whole like just SHIT fest. And I was just like, why is this happening to me? So ultimately what ended up happening, to fast forward, was that I started working full time, started doing my schoolwork from home. It wasn't like, like in the US, like where they have like a GED where it's like, your equivalent. It wasn't that, but it was just doing my work from home instead of doing it at school. Because I could have done it in the lunchroom, I could have done it in the library, I could have gone anywhere. But because of the way that the classes were so like separate, the guidance counselor suggested that I just, you can just just get all your schoolwork and just do it together and then just turn it into your teachers. Little did I know that that's not how it worked. I was going to be actually considered withdrawn from school, but still in high school, if that makes any sense. So it's kind of like, I don't even know what the board would be called, but let's just say the Board of Education. So according to the Board of Education, I was still in high school, but I was not enrolled in an actual school. I was doing the work through the province. So that I didn't even understand. She never told me that. So again, I swear, oh my goodness, I hope all those people get karma. Like, I'm serious. I don't wish ill people on things, ill people. I don't wish ill things on people, but the way that this woman like was screwing me over, but everything happens for a reason. But the way that this woman was screwing me over was like she was ruining my life. Like I felt like she was just ruining my life, because that caused a whole series of drama that I'm not even going to get into. So I'm just going to end it here, and I'm going to do a part 2, because part 2 is going to talk about the fact that how my life just started like literally just going and I had little, ups and downs, but that age of 17, like just that year of being 17, like really was very defining for me in maybe not such a positive way, but I'm going to bring it full circle as to why it's relevant today and why I feel like I've been seeing this number so pronounced lately. But yeah, part 2, we're going to talk about, me finally having a job, like I said, and working full time, and discovering all of a sudden that a lot of household bills ended up in my name, and I was getting contacted to pay bills that I didn't know were in my name, and me being paranoid and, still a child for all intents and purposes, still a child, and not knowing how things worked, but seeing how things worked with my family members, my older family members, and their credit issues and things like that. I just got scared. And my very first paycheck, I had to work 3 weeks to get my first paycheck. My very first paycheck went to paying a phone bill that was in my name. I'll never forget this. It was $219 because somebody decided to put a phone in my name. And that was the beginning of a lot of drama that I've had to go through, a lot of legal activities with my family, which is really crazy. And that, kind of helps people understand why I'm not very close with my family. When people do things like that to you, it's not something that you can get over. And that's like that is like a grain of rice compared to the huge bag of problems that people have put me in that I was just unaware of. Like getting random letters like, oh, you owe, X amount of dollars. And I'm like, wait, what? What is this company? Who is this? What? Where'd you get my signature from? Where'd you get my information from? Like it that way. So, part two, I'm going to be continuing talking about what 17 meant to me and all the things that happened at 17 and how things have come full circle for me right now. So, hopefully, that story gave you a little bit of insight as to um, just how the universe works, how God works, how things, eventually do work themselves out. I mean, you have to trust divine timing, unfortunately. That's just my belief. Because, you can't override God. You can't override God. Like things happen when they're supposed to, not when you want them to. And sometimes we can stand in our own way. Like we can be the cause of our own problems if we don't move when God's asking us to move. And other times things just have to happen for us to learn lessons. Sometimes things happen for us, for me to share this story and like, let people know like, yeah, if you think you have a messed up type of family, come see me. I'll tell you how screwed up mine is. But not 100%, like we all go through things and I know people go through a lot worse in their life, but this is just part one. Part two, probably going to be a little bit shorter because I'm just going to break them down into smaller, little sections. But yeah, that's it. So if you're interested for a part two, like the video, comment if you have any comments, and yeah, subscribe if you want to stay in touch, if you want to keep up with my posts and stuff. I'm going to try and be a little bit more consistent. That was my goal, but there's some things that came up that are still ongoing, but I tried to make time to do a couple things so I could post a couple things and move on to a couple of things. And then when those things are rectified, things will be a lot more clear and smooth for me. So moving on. Until next time, peace and blessings.